All right, folks. Welcome to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner, and this is PRT. Join us in the real reality. Oh, boy. I'm excited for tonight. I'm going to tell you right now. I've been looking forward to this all week. We had this one planned, and I was like, man, we're going to do some Dogman. So I did some research. I was on the phone, believe it or not, up until like 2 hours ago, still talking to people. And so shout out to Carter, Michael, Damon. Also shout out to Ashley from the AT&T store for helping me and my wife the other night. You did a great job. You're a nice lady, very polite and helpful. Thank you. I hate iPhones, not gonna lie. But I'm not gonna be angry at people who have them, even though they seem to be stopping people from being able to get on and join the members only. It's adding an extra step, which sucks, but that's how it is. Shout out to Bill Teague. Thank you for talking to me today, and we had a great talk. Man, he has a lot of stories. That guy, a lot of stories. He knows a lot of stories. He's an interesting person. I'd like to do a show with you, Bill. You come on and you just tell those stories, all these different types of stories you got from two different sides of Texas, far west and far east. That's interesting that he lived in the central, like where I'm at. He lives far west, far east, and everything. Ghost, Bigfoot, Dogman, just good, good to talk to. So the first story we're going to talk about tonight, and we'll get into it in a minute, but it's going to come from my hometown. Another encounter from my hometown, an old one too, one that I didn't know, from somebody who's a. That's not going to work. Give me 1 second. It's going to look like that.
Okay.
Yeah, something a little more. So, because I can't see this. I'm looking at the map here, and I can't see it's too. Couple of these towns are really obscure, so we're trying to find a map that I can use we'll see. A lot of maps. A lot to choose from. What about that one?
And you know what?
Because this is so small, you wear my glasses the whole time here.
Well, we can zoom in and out on this one.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that then. Let's just zoom in. And I'll let you know when we need to zoom in so I can, because I want to make sure I get the right areas. And I can tell you there's towns around those areas where we've covered stories and I've tracked people down. There used to be a guy had a group. It was Texas. It was like Texas. I want to say Texas ghost stories, but they talked about all kinds of stuff in there. But it was Texas something or another. And it was like Texas Paranormal or something. And man, there was a lot of people that were telling stories in that group, and I can't remember the name of it now. But folks, if you haven't joined the Patreon, you really need to. The views on the Patreon episodes they're okay. People are joining, and a lot of people have the membership, but I just want you to use it. Go and watch the Patreon episodes and check them out. If you have the ability to, all you got to do is go to Patreon. Tell them how they can watch it. Because I had a couple people ask me how to watch it, and they joined the Patreon. So.
Yeah, so if you're on Patreon, you can always just go to our Patreon site, which is patreon.com/PRT podcast, and it'll take you to our page. And all you have to do is you scroll down on our Patreon page, and all of the episodes that we release that are Patreon exclusives are going to be right there. You're not going to find those if you go to our YouTube channel, because they're unlisted. They're unlisted episodes, which means that they only appear on Patreon. That's what it amounts to. The members only, though, you can become a member for $5 a month, and you get access to the members only episodes, which those you can find on our YouTube channel. If you're not a member, you can still see them. If you click on those episodes, it's going to say, hey, you're not a member. You have to become a member to access this video. It's $5 a month, and Patreon is $10 a month. At the very least, there's 10, 20, 30, 10, 20, 30, 40, and $50 tiers on Patreon. Patreon's a good deal because no matter what tier you sign up for, after 2 months of being a Patreon member, we're gonna send you what we call a swag bag. It's actually like it comes in a box, so I guess we should call it a swag box. But you're gonna get autographed paranormal books, a hat, T-shirt, stickers, and the higher tier you're on, the more you're gonna get in that swag bag. But regardless of what tier you're on, you're gonna get way more than your money's worth in that swag bag. Also, after you get your first swag bag, after 6 months go by from that point, then you can get another one. All you have to do is just shoot us a message on Patreon saying, "Hey, I'm a Patreon member on this tier. It's been 6 months since I've got my first swag bag. Can you please send me another one?" And we'll send them out. So it's a really good deal. Patreon's really cool, but we try to give back as much as we can for y'all's support on there. And but if you can't afford that, it's only $5 a month to become a member on our YouTube channel. And if you do that, you get access to members only episodes, as well as like if you're here in the live chat, we can do members only emojis, which right now we only have 2 of those, but I want to make some more because people seem to have fun with that, like the custom emojis. So yeah, we'll give y'all some of those too.
Yeah, and so as usual, we're going to wait until we get about 300 in here and just start talking. But man, okay, so the second round of stories is going to come out of Polola County, and that's in East Texas. It borders Louisiana. And I don't know if anybody knows where that's at, but definitely, let's see here if I can get out real quick. I'll look it up. Yeah, Carthage is the, thank you, Shade, for that donation. Carthage is the county seat there. Here's the thing. Here's a funny thing about when I was a kid, my dad, we did some work out there. My dad went out there, and I don't remember what it was. Like we went through there for something. We did a job out there, and it's in the thicket. Like it's big, like thicket area. Well, a lot of people would say it's not because it's north. It's just far north, but I don't give a crap. Technically, maybe, but it is, man. That area is just thick woods, really thick. And I remember I don't remember what we were doing. My dad did an electrical job out there for like the weekend for somebody he knew. And we stayed at their house. And I remember like going out on the back porch and skipping rocks. There was like a creek right there that fed into the Sabine. And somebody had told me that Bigfoot lived out there.
Uh-huh.
I was like 9, I was a little kid. And I was like, really? And so it kind of scared me. And so I really didn't really believe in it, back then. But it was enough to make me, and I remember just hearing this loud whooping noise coming from the woods that night. And I was sleeping and they had like a kind of like a cabin. It was like a loft, and you could walk out and there was like a deck on the front. You could walk out like what do you call that? Like a balcony. And then a balcony in the back. But it was like a big old balcony, like a deck. And I just remember being a kid, and I walked out there. And it was somebody that my dad knew. I don't remember the whole story. I just remember going out there, and I was like tired as hell because I remember like that Friday I had like baseball practice or something. So I slept half the way out there. And then we get out there and we're there all weekend. And then we didn't have school that Monday. So we just stayed out there, and it was my dad's long weekend from the power plant. So, and he used to always take jobs, people he knew. He knew everybody.
Yeah.
And so we were out there, and I just remember hearing like this whooping noise or something coming from the woods. And I remember these people had kids, but they were older. They were like in their late teens or whatever. And one of them older boys was like, "There's Bigfoot out there." And he didn't like go, "Ha ha ha," nothing like that. He just like told me. And so I'm out there on the top deck, at that evening. It was nice and cool. I remember it was like, in October, November, something like that. And I heard it. I heard like this weird noise, and I thought, that's got to be Bigfoot. So I ran inside, and I remember laying in bed that Saturday night, and I thought it was cool because they had like, video games and stuff like that, stuff that I didn't have at my house. Like I think they had like a Nintendo or something, and I didn't have a Nintendo. I didn't get a Nintendo when everybody else did. I got mine behind everybody. Everybody already had one. They're like, "Oh, you don't have a Nintendo?" Of course not.
Ew, get away from me.
Yeah, like, ew, what happened to you? So I think I guess it was like 1986.
Especially when you're a kid. Kids are ruthless.
Or not 86. No, it was 80,
you're poor.
It was 80. It was 85. I think it was either 85 or 80. Yeah. I think it was 84. Maybe it was 84. I don't know. But Nintendo, I think, had just come out. Maybe it's 85. I don't remember the whole thing. But I just remember they had like a video game and I was playing it and I thought it was cool. So I went to sleep because those people went out of town. They went to Palestine, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were down in Palestine and I went to sleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up hearing that noise again. I didn't see anything. But years later, I was talking to Patrick Cross. Well, Patrick Cross, that dude that he was studying the Sabine thing, like that Sabine River monster. And it was him and another guy named Holloway. They were in these groups I knew. I don't think they're even researching anymore. The one guy moved to Wyoming, but he used to live in Texas. They were friends that grew up down in that area, in Carthage, and they were talking about that is a real thing. Like it's very common. People see that and they hear that hollering noise. And so I was listening to it about years ago, maybe 2021. I remember that because it was right before my mother passed. They had sent me some audio recording. I still got them. They're on the computer. You probably heard them, but they sound like what I heard when I was a kid. And that area really just that Panola area.
Yeah.
It freaks me out, dude. I drove through there one time when I was with my brother. We were going to the casino to meet some friends in Bossier. And I decided to go up and around, and go through that Sabine River area. So we went down to the river. It's probably been 25 years now. And just to check it out, we drove along down in there. And I said, man, the woods are so thick. You could get lost up in there and nobody would ever see you. That'd be it. You'd be just gone. It's thick. I just remember that area around the river there being like. Anyways, we got 308 people here. So I'm going to tell you this, man. This is a story. Now, this guy's son, he's a little older than me. He's like 54. And he was, I didn't even go to high school. He was already out of high school when I was, he's a little bit younger than my sister and your mama. Or my sisters, your mama and my sister. The other one, the stupid sister. So anyways, I shouldn't say that. I pray for them every day. They just, the people are the way they are. They're going to be the way they are. I don't care. I forgive and forget. Oh, one other thing. Before I go any further, I got to say something. Okay, over this past weekend, two of my friends here on Facebook and YouTube got into it. Okay, and I care about both these people. We're very good friends, and they were going back and forth. And I'm telling you, man, I don't like that kind of stuff. I wish it wouldn't be that way, especially with people I care about and I'm friends with. Not mentioning any names, but if I ask you to stop, please stop, please. Thank you, Jason Broussard. Awesome dude, man. Jason with the hookup there. Everybody's like, well, he's got it. We don't got to help anymore. That's it. We're done. That's it. Hate to get the big donation early because then everybody else just gives up. But I appreciate getting a big donation regardless. Thank you so much. Couldn't come at a better time. Been looking at the gold market recently. Somebody asked me about this. Hold. I know gold is shot up. It's higher now. I recently had to sell some to get some stuff done. But if you can hold on to it, hold on to it. Because I'm going to try and hold on to the bulk of mine. And then one day I might come in and don't have any jewelry on. You know what happened. Took my investment, melted it down, and did what it was supposed to do. So just hold. Because I'm predicting by this time next year, gold will be 45. I'm not going to say 5,000. That's kind of pushing it. But I think it could be easily at 45. It's going to keep going. So if you got that, hold on to it. If you got XRP, hold on to it. There's just some things you got to do. Just hang on, and it's going to go up. The other thing I was going to say too, there are people that have, and I don't want to go into this, and I'm not going to talk about it ad nauseum. This light is off here. Let Anthony deal with that. I can't reach it. He don't like me messing with stuff. But some people are saying some things, and now they're creating this narrative that we're trying to get them unalived by talking about them. So best thing I'm going to do is just not say anything, not talk about them. If you want to know what's going on, go to PRT News. And I strongly discourage anyone from attacking these people in any shape or form. Don't give them the time of day. I noticed that they were attacking some people, friends of mine, and I said something to the friends like, and I told them the same thing I'm telling you. Don't retaliate. Just tell them, okay, thank you, sir, whatever, and move on, because they're trying to build this narrative like they're going to be Charlie Kirk, and they're not. Okay, they're not going to be Charlie Kirk. They can say what they want. It's freedom of speech, and I believe in freedom of speech, and I don't believe in these hate laws that they're trying to get passed now on the back of what happened with Charlie. Charlie wouldn't want that. I don't believe that. But these people are trying to say, "Oh, he's trying to get us unalived." Nobody wants to unalive you, dude. I don't want anything to happen to any of y'all. The only thing I want, and what I've always wanted and what I've always asked, is just leave us the hell alone. That seems to be mission impossible for these people. And I'm not even talking about a bunch of them. There's just 7 or 8 of them, and they're just nuts. And I talked to a couple people today who were just message after message after just attacking them for sticking up for me. So just don't even bother. Don't even bother, because I may not be able to be there to defend you or help you. So I don't want you being attacked for defending me or my family. The things that they've done and said are right there for anybody to see. What they've said, the horrible things they said about my wife since she had the tumor diagnosis. And I'm just not gonna. We just can't engage them, because they want to build a narrative that we're out to get them. And I'm not out to get them. I promise you. All I want is to be left alone. And somebody made some message in our comment section about, tell me who to go do this and do that. I don't know who you are, but I don't do that. I'm not going to have anybody do anything like that. I don't want anybody to do anything like that. Please, for the love of God, don't try to hurt these people. Don't mess with these people. Don't do anything to these people, because the way they are, I would not doubt if they would want one of them, something to happen. They don't care about each other. They don't care about us. And you would just be playing right into their hands, and then they could run around crying and pretending to be martyrs, and it's just going to blow back on us, and they're going to be like, oh, they wanted this to happen. We don't want this to happen. I don't. I definitely do not. I'm not a hate monger. I'm not a warmonger. I don't want this stuff going on. As you can see there's the gold futures right there, 37.25, baby. And the gold spot, I don't know exactly what it is today. We can look it up. But if you got on board when I told you to, you're going to be sitting pretty good. Gold spot's 37.02. So it's up there. But hang on. Just hang on to it. Just let it ride, unless you need the money. You got to do what you got to do. I just don't, like I said, I don't condone any kind of violence. I don't want anybody doing anything. One of them made a comment saying that I want their blood on my hands. Hell no. Hell no. That's a sick, stupid, crazy thing. Nobody wants to. If you want something like that, then you got something wrong with you. I mean, that's a mental sickness. I wouldn't even say a mental sickness. If you want something like that, you have a sickness of your soul. And we're seeing it recently with these people with the Charlie Kirk thing. They're rejoicing in a man's death and his murder. And that's not something I want. The last thing I want is for people to go out and unalive people, especially in my name. Don't do it. I will never, if somebody does something to one of these people or tries to, I'll never speak to you again. I will never be your friend. I will never be okay with that. And you should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. I don't like these people the way that they are. I don't hate them. I don't. I forgive them. Some of them have some very twisted logic and the reasons that they have for believing the way that they do and hating the way that they do. And it's pretty twisted. They did some real mental gymnastics to try to make it be the way it is, but that's on them. And it's their freedom of speech. If they want to call me a poo-poo cockahead. Now, the threats and the doxing and all that, I mean, we did all we could. We sent cease and desist, and all they did was, wipe their butt with it. That's it. And so I don't have the money to go out and sue all these people, and I don't care. Just, if they get the sand to sue me, then they're going to be deposed hardcore. Then everything's going to come out. So I don't think they would even try. They're not that stupid, even though they appear to be very dumb. But being stupid is not a crime. So they haven't committed a crime in that way. And they haven't physically hurt us other than possibly doing things spiritually. And I say possibly because I don't have proof of it. I don't. And so all I want is for people to just not engage with them, block them, delete them, whatever you got to do. Don't talk to them, ignore them as best you can. We keep a running record of all the things that they do and say. It's all there. We have not threatened them. They keep talking about all these threats. I don't know where it's coming from because it ain't coming from me. So just don't do anything to them. I don't want them to have any excuse at all to because then they can point and say, "Oh, this is why we're doing it." What was your excuse before? You didn't have one, and you did it anyway. They're obviously not going to stop, and they're delusional. And when two people from PRT go back and forth and fight, you see what happened. One of them jumped on it and was opportunistic and used it as look, oh, they fight each other. It's mostly them that do that. We don't usually fight one another. There's nothing to be fighting about. Unfortunately, two of our people got into it, and it just went on and on the whole weekend between these two people. Really, nobody else was involved. It was just these two guys going back and forth. And I listened to both sides of it, and I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm not going to get involved in your domestic squabbles. I'm just not. I mean, I'm not a part of it. My name was brought into it on both sides, as was Blondes and Booze. And that's unfortunate because none of us are picking sides. If you have a personal beef or vendetta with somebody, that's on you. I'm not going to play referee. I asked them both to stop. And if they don't, that's unfortunate. But these people, they will be opportunistic and use anything they can against us. And you got to look at the big picture. We have bigger fish to fry here at PRT than to get caught up in with these people. We can't keep dealing with this. And so just, pretend like they don't exist. They're going to keep on saying things. And they do. And some people have told me today, they're like, it's very hard because they say the most vile and sadistic things you could think of. And they lie and they lie and they lie. And it is hard to read the lies that they post, and you're just sitting there going like, geez Louise. But do us a favor and do yourself a favor and just rise above it. That's all we can do. So that being said, let's get started on the show. We're always going to have haters, right? Because if you're doing something right, you got haters. I mean, I had a guy recently, he asked me about his channel's a little bit smaller and he's growing. And I don't want to say his name only because I don't want to make him feel embarrassed or something about what the question he asked. He said, how do you know you've made it? How do you know that you've arrived? I don't feel like I'm there yet. And I said, well, you'll know because a bunch of haters will come. They're going to come out. And then when you ruffle enough feathers, you can kind of say, okay, I'm there. Unfortunately, that's a gauge. That's one gauge right there. Because if you're not ruffling enough feathers, well, you're not making a difference. Nobody cares because evil will always try to stop what good is doing, right? And then it will turn around and say that it's the good and you're the evil. That's what always happens. So, just remember that. And I told him that. I said, just, don't be too eager to be bigger because bigger is not always better. Then you get attacked. Our growth has slowed to a crawl. I mean, it is, because we're just constantly mass reported. And we're constantly having to answer to YouTube for every little, because these people, they watch like a hawk. They're watching right now. And they just look for any weakness or opening so that they can, or perceived weakness so that they can run and attack it and ship it off to the people at YouTube or they can complain. So yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing less work on this platform temporarily anyway. We're trying to figure out how we can combat that, but you just got to do what in your heart is right, and just trading blows with these people is a waste of time. They're never going to stop, and you can't physically do anything to them. You can't, because that plays right into the narrative that they're building. And so, and I don't want people doing that anyway. I don't want anybody getting hurt over this. They keep saying, oh, he's going to incite people to hurt people. I'm not trying to incite anybody to do anything. I'm telling you the truth of what they're doing, and it's making people upset. and they're not getting the same response because they have no proof. They claim they have these receipts. Where are they? Where are they? You don't. You know you don't. You can contrive some things. That's about it. But anyway, that's what's going on, and I just think strongly discourage anybody from doing anything toward these people. They could be any kind of legal, whatever. Let's just keep it clean, folks. All right, stick to the facts. Facts is what kills them. It kills their soul when you talk facts because they don't have them. They just have a bunch of feelings that they throw out there. Exactly, Excalibur. I mean, they're over here creating a narrative that I know that I feel like it's been going on for a long time. I felt the same way. That they were trying to build something to get somebody to do something and nobody would do anything. So now they're trying to say we're doing it. No, it's not happening. But I do feel like I've been a target. I couldn't go to the conferences this weekend that I wanted to go to because I don't know what might happen. I can't have another conference because I don't know what might happen. A couple of these people are Looney Tune, unhinged big time. And you don't know what they might try to pull or what they might do. So, that's me. We can't do it. So that being said, let's get started here. This first encounter that I was talking about, it comes from my hometown. And this guy, he is a little bit older than me, but our dads were friends years ago. And I never knew that he had an encounter. And so he himself didn't, but his dad did. So he told me, he goes, I read your book. He's like, I saw on Amazon, I saw your name on there. He goes, and I was like, Josh Turner. I went to high school with a guy named Josh. I looked it up. He didn't know anything about it. And he said, hey, and so he remembers another mutual friend of ours who's in between us in age, who had told him that I'd written a book, and it was, there was a bunch of stuff from our hometown. And he knew a couple of people in the book. And so he talked to them and he was like, that's interesting, that they talked to him. And so he said, he reached out to me on Messenger. He said, my dad had an encounter with this thing. I never knew that. And I didn't ask my dad about it. I talked to my dad this weekend, but prior to that, I'd never spoken to him about it. And it was interesting that he had said that his dad had an encounter with this creature, kind of saying like there's just one, you know what I mean? And he asked me my opinion on this, and I'll tell you what happened to his dad. In south of Taylor, where we grew up, well, I didn't grow up where we were, from in Taylor, Texas. The south side of Taylor was Black and Hispanic. There were no white people that lived over there. None. I say none. I say when I grew up, there might have been 2 families. That was it. And my dad's was the same way. But my dad didn't live in town. My dad lived in, hey, Curtis, what's going on? My brother from another mother. No relation, but great guy. And so my dad lived out in between a town called Copeland and Taylor, Texas. He didn't live in South Taylor, but he had a friend that did. And his friend that lived in the South Side, he was the only white guy in that area. And he dated a Mexican girl. And so he used to, when he was young and poor, he was 18 years old, he would walk across, South Taylor to go to this girl's house. And nobody really messed with him because everybody knew who he was. And so we'll call him Sam, but Sam would walk, across the town or whatever. And he said sometimes, some of these Hispanic guys in that part of town, because there were Hispanic people in that area, and then there was the Black neighborhood was on the other side. And yeah, it was pretty segregated, even, back then, especially. And so he'd get a ride, But that day he was walking to go visit this girl, and he sees this old guy. There was one white guy that lived there, one, in an area near this place called The Hole. And it was they turned it into a softball / baseball field. People would use it, whatever, but it would flood out if it rained, which it used to rain all the time. So it would flood. And then there's a big old creek right there called Mustang Creek. And I've seen Mustang Creek get real full. If you look at my book, Werewolves and the Dogman Phenomena, you'll notice that creek, we took pictures down by that creek. We went down there, we snapped photos, and that creek will swell up, right? Well, Sam was walking through there, going to this girl's house, coming from, his family literally had like a little country. I'd say like it was like living out in the country, a little country spread right there at the very back end of town. And my dad lived a few miles outside of town. So he was always in South Taylor. But him and my dad were friends and they were young at this time. I think he's a year older than my dad. My dad would have been only 17. And so this was in the summertime and he was walking to this girl's house. And the creek was a little bit swollen, from a rain that had rained. And he said, he's like, he heard something like splashing around down there. And he looks over the side of the bridge and he sees the one old white guy that lived in that area. And everybody called him a German, but he really wasn't German. He was Czech. And so the people in that area, they don't know. They didn't even call him German. The word for German in my hometown was Dutchman. Okay. These are country people. They're very country people. Even the black and Hispanic people are very country, dude. Like, I mean, you don't go to the inner city and see black people chewing tobacco and dipping snuff. Well, they did in my hometown. Okay. The black people would chew tobacco and dip snuff. It was very, even if they were a little bit hood, they were still country. You know what I mean? Like, you go into like the projects and you'd see black people wearing cowboy hats. I'm not even joking. It's just, I'm being honest, especially back in those days. And everybody worked around the farms and ranches around there. They either chopped cotton or they ran cattle or they worked with sheep or whatever. It's just a country town. That's how it is. And so Sam was no different. He had a job. His family had a little 2-acre spot there with some goats, but he worked chopping cotton in the summer. It was brutal work, but that's how you make money. And so he had got his little bit of money. It was a Friday night. He's walking through there. He wants to go see this girl. He says he sees that old German guy splashing around down in the creek. It's about waist-high water, and he's like, what is he doing down there? That creek is a lot of runoff, so a lot of people aren't going to go swimming in there, and he kept diving down into the water, and he goes, I watched him for a few minutes. This is what he told his son, gave me his story. He's no longer with us. He's deceased, my friend's dad. And he said, my dad was diving down into that water. Watched that German man diving into the water, which I said before. I don't think he was German, but that's what they called him.
Yeah.
And he said that he sits up and he looks at my dad and he stares at him and he goes, and it was dark under, where that bridge is at? It's dark underneath there.
Mm-hmm.
There's no sunlight down there. And he said that Sambo saw him and Sambo was like, his eyes were glowing yellow. It was weird. And there were like rumors and stories about this old guy. The weirdest thing about this guy was he was old back in those days. Like he looked like he was 60 years old at that time. I mean, old is in, 60-year-old from that day and age is not 60 now.
Yeah.
60 back then, you looked like you were 80 because you were weathered and you worked in the sun and you were, it was ranching and farming. That's all you did. But he looked like he might have been in his 60s, country years, And Sam was like, why is this guy, his eyes look glowing yellow. He kind of backed off of the railing of the bridge and was like, kind of spooked. So he just took off walking. He said every now and then I'd see him on the porch just sitting there, whittling, messing with sticks and stuff. And he made this little fence out of little wooden sticks, like a little thatch fence. And he had this little dog, like a little chihuahua. And the dog would yap and stuff. And he would be by the fence. He goes, and he'd look at him and be like, evening. And the guy would just sit there, never speak, wouldn't blink, which was weird. He told his son he never blinked. And so he said that he was, in the water. I don't know what he was doing. He said that day, he hung out with his girlfriend for a couple of hours and then they were walking back down to the main road and they were going to get a ride with this other guy that was their friend. And that guy's name was Freddie. Everybody knew him, and he's local Hispanic guy, whatever, Mexican. Had a nice car, had a souped up Chevy, and that's all he did was put his money into that car. So he told Sambo, he's like, yeah, I'll be there. I'll pick you up, And like I said, Sam's the only white guy in that area. And luckily he was like my dad. He was very friendly with the black and Hispanic community. So there wasn't a lot of problems. And he says, we were walking down that hill and there's the old man and he's out in the front yard with his little yappy chihuahua and he's cleaning fish. And he goes, looks at his girlfriend and tells her, whoa, oh, I'm being abducted. He tells his girlfriend, he's like, I just saw that old dude diving into the water down there, that waist high water down in Mustang Creek. And she was like, yeah, he's weird. He's a really weird guy. Well, what his son told me, he goes, my dad always told me this story. He goes, and I didn't know that you'd written a book or anything until recently. Actually, I think it was my cousin. Well, he's not my cousin, his cousin, half cousin, whatever. My sister's cousin, Shane, said something to him. Says, hey, you know, he wrote a book. You know, I think that's who told him. I'm not for sure. But he's cousin by marriage, put that way. And so Shane, a little bit younger than me, but Shane told him, he's like, he ran into him, said, hey, you know, there's a book, you know, about this stuff, because there's another sighting we're going to get into after this, which sparked this, right? And he said, this creature or whatever it was jumped out on the road in front of him when he was young, when he was like 10, when he was coming out, you know, and he lived, well, you know where our cousins live, back up in there on that hill, you know, by the railroad tracks. His place would have been out the bottom of that. So he said when he was 10 years old, this giant wolf-like creature jumped out in front of him when he was trying to, like, on the road, trying to close the pin. There's like a little it turns into a gravel road, and it only goes up into their place. It's not laid out like that anymore, because people that bought it, they bought 2 plats and put it together. And there's about a 2-acre little piece of land they had there. And he said, I was on that gravel road, and I had gone up the hill on a bike, and I was closing the gate, and this thing jumped out on the road. He goes, I left my bike and ran to the house. That was the first time he'd ever seen it, right? That was his dad. And so he just had this fear for a long time. But when he fell in love with this girl, he just got over it. You know, I'm just going to walk, you know. And so he started, you know, going into town. He was told by one of the black people there, they called it the haint. We've talked about that before. One of my friend's grandmothers claimed to have seen one of these things. The people in my own town are very adamant that this thing is a werewolf. It is a shapeshifter. They do not believe, not one person we've interviewed. And Anthony, you interviewed about a half a dozen of them with me.
Yep.
And I interviewed at least a dozen just in that area. And so did Ken Gerhardt.
Didn't your friend Theo's grandma get on to y'all one time? Because y'all went down in the holler where she said there was a haint.
The haint, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he got his ass whooped. I had to watch it.
Yeah.
I was just glad it wasn't me. I was like, but he was always getting in trouble. He was always doing stuff he wasn't supposed to be doing. Theo, you know, that guy, a crazy black dude, man. He hates humanity. He's not racist at all.
Yeah.
He just don't like city people. He said nothing good happens in town. We saw him at the feed store. You know, he's crazy. But what's crazy though about this was this thing, whatever it was. He talked to one of the black people. They were down there playing softball, and they needed an extra player. So, and this, remember, folks, this is in the 60s, right? Okay. This is a long time ago. All right. So, you know, it's not, you know, this, I think it was like 1969 or something like that, you know, so 60s and 70s. I was born in 75. So, you know, it would have been, you know, a different time. And in fact, I think this encounter happened in 1968. So here's what happened. Like they needed an extra player to play softball. So he goes and he joins with, you know, and it was black people versus Mexican people. And that's how that's what they did. You know, I don't make the rules, and this is the old South, so take it for what it is. And so he joined on the Mexican people's team because they were short a player. And at the end of the game, one of the black people there that was a real good friend, they called him Sugar. And Sugar was a friend of my dad's too. This old guy told him, you know, he goes, you know what you saw? The haint. And he's like, yeah, because they were talking about it. And these black people were talking about having seen it. Well, they point to the top of the hill above the hole, and they said, that's that old German guy. And they were like, believing that he was this werewolf. He was a shapeshifter. And they were absolutely terrified of that guy. The story goes back to a woman named Marisol who literally was grabbed by this thing. And I'll get into that story. Now, that story, I was reminded of that story. We were going to talk about that one in the book. But the reason we didn't, though, and I told Ken this too when we were writing it, is because it was sort of an urban legend. But I've been able to track down the source of that urban legend. Marisol Martinez, that's her name. Once again, she's not around anymore. She's deceased, but her relatives, they told me this is what happened. What happened to her happened in 1952. Now, when I was a young boy and I went and we practiced down the hole sometimes, that old German guy was still there. It didn't dawn on me that I was, late 80s, early 90s, that this dude should have been like 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
He still looked like he was 60. And he would sit out on that porch and watch us play. And now there were people that claimed that he only came out at night. That's not true because I saw him during the day when we practiced. And so I don't want this to be, well, there's an old hermit there that doesn't fit in, so we're going to blame him. No, it was his actions and the things that he was doing that made people believe that this could have been him, right? And hopefully we'll have enough time to go over all of this and then get into Polola County. If not, then we'll just throw it onto the Patreon or whatever. But I think that there's something to this, and I'll tell you what I believe. The fact that he was jumping around in the water and then later he had fish, there was no fishing reel, nothing.
Just catching them.
Jay, I'm going to call him Jay. Jay's dad, Sambo, didn't see any, they just, it was weird. Like, what in the hell is this guy doing? Which would make sense why the black people and the Mexican people in that area thought this weird old guy, And I thought for years, like maybe the legends and stories around this guy were just because he was white. Maybe he acted really weird because he was afraid around the people around him or something, maybe. But in the 60s and 70s, the black Hispanic people they weren't going to mess with you. They didn't want to mess with a white person because they'd be in trouble. So he didn't have any real reason to do any of that stuff, to act crazy and weird, but he did. And one of the things he did was he would walk out of his house, and he had a little garden, and he would, walk around the house. There was this little fence he had made with whittled sticks. It wasn't to keep anything out, just his little dog that, keep it in. And he would walk around naked, and water the grass. This is back in the 70s. People were just like, well, he's just weird. Nobody's really calling the cops.
Weird old hermit. Just
a weird old guy. But then there were other things he did, like he would run around on all fours, and he moved like very efficiently on all fours, which was weird too. And I remember my mother's family, who lived a little further, north from there, talking about how he was weird and how he would do that, and he could run around like a dog, and he would sometimes go up to the fence and growl and sniff and act like a dog. But there were other people that claimed at times there was a very large dog in that yard, or a large wolf-like animal. It didn't jump the fence and maul anybody out in the open, but it was there. In particular, one of my uncle's best friends told me years ago when I was young that this thing came up to the fence and stood up. So not a real, amazing encounter, but still it was an encounter with something not normal. Let's put it that way. So they're walking away from this down the hill to go to catch a ride with his buddy Freddie. You could always hear, because he had a real souped up, car or whatever. He said Freddie shows up, gives him a ride, and his girlfriend's there, and their girlfriends are best friends. Freddie was the same age as Sambo, so they went to school together. And they had just started to integrate the high school back then. It was like, they had a high school for the blacks down in South Taylor. Funny thing about that is the white high school, which is where the middle school was when I was growing up, and now it's just a bunch of shops or whatever it is. Weird. They turned it into like a weird thing. The Mexicans could go, my mom said this, the Mexicans could go to either school. Mm-hmm. They could go to the black high school or to the white high school. So some of them stayed in South Taylor. Some of them went to the white high school where my mom went. That's how my mom and dad, became friends, whatever. And so this guy, he's getting in the car, and as soon as he gets in the car, he tells Freddie, he's like, that weird old German guy, some of them called him a Bohemian or whatever. He said that weird German Bohemian, whatever he is, the Dutchman. He was swimming around naked out in that water, and now he's up there cleaning fish. He didn't have a fishing pole. Freddie turns around, looks at him, because he's in the back with his girlfriend, right? And he's like, man, that vato is crazy. He said, let me tell you what happened. So he tells him the story of Marisol, who was actually Freddie's aunt. According to them, when she was this young girl, she was in her 20s, she was coming back from a big party at this community center. It's still there to this day. It was built years ago. The building looked like it was going to fall down in the mid 80s. I don't know how old it was, but it was ancient. And she was walking back home. This creature runs out and attacks her. Runs out of between these alleys right there behind where this old German guy's house was, and it attacks her, grabs her by her dress. The guy she's with, the coward that he is, he runs away.
Oh no.
And leaves her.
Turd.
Leaves her there. So then this guy, her dress gets all torn up, her nice, beautiful blue dress, and she runs and goes, and there's these two dogs in this neighboring yard, and they're barking and acting freaked out. And she thought, this thing is attacking her. It stumbled and fell. It was a physical thing. She ran to that person's house and opened the gate, and these two German Shepherd, and I don't know what the other one was. The story is that they were German Shepherds, but according to what what Jay said that his dad told him was, that's a real story. And that his friend Freddie said that happened to my aunt. That literally happened to my aunt. So I tracked them down. The people. Now Freddie's not around anymore either, but I talked to his brother's daughter, his niece, and she said that is a family story. That really happened. And for years, this woman Marisol had the scars on her. Now, she was like in her 20s in 1952. My dad was born in 1950. That's 1952, whatever. So he would have been a baby. Like they don't even know they don't know her that well. It's like she was already whatever. And she wasn't from there. She was from Elgin, Texas. And so she ended up like going to this, I think it was like a quinceañera or whatever, but you know how those go. It's just everybody dancing and getting drunk.
Yeah.
And this borracho that she was with, this drunken fool, he left her. The fool just ran away. And that's what fools do. And so this creature attacks her, and then these two dogs run out, and by the grace of God, they start fighting with this creature, and she runs. She runs barefoot, just holding her shoes in her hands. Can't even, and she's like, at one point steps on a rock, and it gashes her foot so bad she falls into a ditch next to some people's house. And when this thing was done with these dogs, it runs toward her. She can see it coming down the alley. She had put some distance between her and this creature. She looks down. She's got a huge gash in her foot. She stands up and decides she's going to run. She takes one step, and it's just like it cut something so bad she couldn't hardly move. So she ends up laying down in the ditch. The fence that was there, she was able to crawl up under it. And so she got on the other side of that fence and just laid there up against it. And she could hear this creature walking around in this muddy ditch and sniffing for her. And then the creature spoke. This thing could talk.
Oh, man.
And so it says, I'm going to get you. And it said it in Spanish. And then it said it in English. And it told her, it's like, yeah, you're going to die, basically. And she said that she was laying up against the fence, terrified. And then eventually this thing looks over the top of her. At that point, a porch light comes on and somebody comes out. And they see this creature and they start shooting at it. She screams, gets up, and like tells them, hey, it's me. She's on her knees, like, and she runs up to the porch, and this elderly couple let her in. Well, they called their grandson or whatever. He shows up, and he's in the front yard and looking around, looking for this thing. And he gets pulled down to the ground in front of these people and the neighbors. They're all there. And all they see is this like grayish furred arm, like pulling him from underneath that fence. And so they know he's there, but they can't shoot because they're going to risk hitting him.
Mm-hmm.
So his grandfather has to go right up to this thing. And when he does, he looks over the fence, kind of like on a little hill, and he's looking down and he sees this creature. This is the story that was relayed to me by her niece. They look, and this is the same thing that Jay said, but Jay's version was just a little more superficial, just the whatever. When he sees this creature, it's got the face of a man, Like it was like it literally right before his eyes, it was becoming a man. And he pulled his arm out from underneath there and he stood up and he ran down, going north on this street. Well, it was an alley, but he ran down the alley and he was turning into a naked man. The next day, he knew exactly who it was, and it was that guy. It was that old German guy. And the next day, he goes to the police. That morning, they go to the police and tell them, this guy, you need to arrest him. I don't know, what just happened. I don't know what I saw, but it looked like a wolf becoming a man. Well, obviously, the police, and this is in 1952, do you think that they're going to go, okay, crazy little Mexican guy, we're going to get right on there. We're going to go arrest a white guy because you claim that he turned into a not a werewolf, So they got laughed right out of the police station. The injuries sustained to his grandson and to this woman that they didn't know from Adam, who was originally from Elgin, and her boyfriend had left her. So nothing ever came of it. The police went and talked to the polite old Dutchman, and he just said, oh, it wasn't me. I've been here all night just whittling, doing nothing of any substance. Well, over the years, the stories got more and more numerous. In fact, one of your old neighbors had a story about going and playing ball over there in the hole. And then when he was leaving, going up the hill to his car, there was this giant wolf across the road that was watching him. Grayish, shaggy wolf. Now, I got to say, my own cousin was accosted by something going across Mustang Creek. It's in my book. Her story was that her and her family were running across the bridge because her dad had attacked her mother and he was drunk. And when they saw this creature coming out from underneath that bridge, which it liked to hang out there, it like literally ran up onto the, road and on the sidewalk and gave chase. Well, they managed to get away from it. They outpaced it and they got to her aunt's house. The creature that she described was black with red eyes. Now, what I saw, I don't remember red eyes. I've said that before.
Mm-hmm.
But it was black and it wasn't gray. It wasn't a large gray wolf. So the descriptions of this thing range from gray to like smoke gray, like a blackish gray, like a charcoal gray. But most of the stories I got were of a gray, shaggy wolf. What I saw and what multiple other people saw was black. Definitely black. I believe this. I believe that they're two different things. But I also believe this too. I don't believe that they're just one of them and it's just there. I think that there are, yeah, exactly. Life 1042. You said it. There's two different monsters. Both of them, creatures like that. Is one of them a dog man and one of them a werewolf? Or are they both dog men? Are they both werewolves? Is it just coincidence that this guy is seen and that the original story, not the first story from that region, but the first story in that area that links this guy to this haunting? And I'll say haunting because that's what it is. He's haunting that area. Is this story to be believed? Did this really happen? Was there a woman? Yes, there was. There was a woman named Marisol. And I did talk to her relatives. Two of them, in fact. And this was about 3 months ago. But I had, to try to get to the bottom of this. And it's an ongoing thing for me. An investigation that will probably never end because I want to know what I saw. Now, some people may say, hey, it happened, just move on, whatever, I'm 50 years old. It happened when I was 15. What is that, 35 years ago? I told somebody recently, we were talking on the phone, and they had an encounter when they were 14 in Tennessee. That guy's like 46 years old. He goes, yeah, I know. I should probably just move on. It was 32 years ago. I said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's important to you. It's important to you to find out, to know the truth. 35 years goes by in the blink of an eye, folks, and it feels like just yesterday I can recall every single detail of what happened to me. Some people have told me that they believe that this was a certain individual that was doing this. He was a younger guy. I found out a little bit about that guy, and that guy's still alive. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to accuse somebody and then, somebody say this and that. Guess what? This guy who some people had pointed the finger at and said maybe it was him because he was into this shape shifting, and one of his old roommates claims that he had all kinds of books on the occult and did a lot of studying in shape shifting and Navajo lore and skinwalker or whatever. And this person reached out to me through a mutual friend because I know everybody in Taylor. And he says, look, he goes, I think it was him. He also had a book full of drawings of weird stuff. And at one time, he was wanted by the police in a neighboring county. Pretty weird. And, the charge that he had, too, was theft of livestock. This guy lived in town. He wasn't like a country person. So what was he doing? Interesting, too, this guy, and here is the main kicker. His last name was the same name as that old German guy's.
Mm.
And I don't know if they're related. I don't know.
Not a coincidence. I don't think so.
No. So, did I see a werewolf when I was 15 years old? Because everybody wanted to tell me it was a Dogman, right? When I was talked to by the police, the police officer that answered the call didn't bat an eye. And he was very honest and said he believed me. And also went so far as to say there were other people who had reported this. And we were at a barbecue cook-off years and years later, back in like 2010. And he told me, two of my guards, and my friend Scorpion. Scorpion was there for that conversation. Is he in the chat? Where's Scorpion? I haven't seen him or D. Or Tony either. Are they even in the chat? I don't know. But Scorpion can back me up on this. Like, he was there during the conversation, and we worked together that day. And this is a retired police officer, and they began to tell us some very strange things. And if you go back to, is it Texas Wolfmen?
Yeah.
If you go back to the episode called Texas Wolfmen, we touch on some things there. And I didn't put this in my book, and we debated it back and forth, me and Ken Gerhardt and a couple other authors, and including David Weatherly. We had a conversation. I was like, do you think I should say this? And a couple people said yes, a couple people said no. I didn't want trouble, okay? I just didn't want trouble, but I don't know what to believe in all of this. Well, this is one town in Central Texas, but I can assure you this is not just one town where this is happening. I believe that this happens in a lot of towns, and not just in Central Texas, but in East Texas, West Texas. I know I talked to people today about it. In fact, you heard part of the conversation I was having today, Anthony, about this stuff. And I can tell you this, it's happening in a lot of different places. And I'm interviewing people from Pennsylvania, from Ohio, from New Jersey, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Those states are hotbeds. Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma. I'm telling you, New Mexico is a hotbed. Northern California, Oregon and Washington, mostly Bigfoot, but you get Dogman reports up there too. What are we to make of all these reports? We stopped at a guy's shop in Rockdale, Texas on Friday. And this guy, his name is Manuel. Shout out to Manuel. I think he's Manuel's Imports, I think it's called, right?
Yeah.
He makes these metal, he owns a factory in Mexico, and he makes these metal. I'm gonna get a bunch of PRT ones made and do them for giveaways. I'm gonna do them as a giveaway. But they're really cool. I don't have one with me. I was gonna bring it, and I bought one. It was a Texas Longhorn like deal, and it's made out of metal, like sheet metal, and it's really cool the way they do it. And so we're talking there, and when he sees the logo, he points at that and said, and Anthony, you could show him the logo on your hat there.
Yeah.
Let me show the logo. Right. So he starts kind of looking at that logo. Then we show him the other logo, and where the werewolf is a little more pronounced. And he says, "Oh, I like that logo." And he said, "I've seen that dude right there." Like literally said that. Manuel said that. and then proceeded to tell us in 1997, he remembers it was the year that the Marlins won the World Series. He said that. He was living in Florida. And I believe he said it was outside of Fort Lauderdale, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He saw one of these creatures, gray, shaggy, and proceeded to tell us an entire story about it. And I'm sitting there going like, holy crap, dude. So a random, just showing somebody the logo and talking to him about it, this guy started talking to us and telling us his story. He lives right there in Rockdale, Texas. And I couldn't believe it, dude. It's right there on Main Street. It's been there for 30 years, that place. And, my wife liked this like metal dinosaur that he had. So we were talking to him about it. It's really cool. It's like the one from Jurassic Park, but it's made out of sheet metal. It's a really neat little deal. So we kind of haggled on the price a little bit, and so we talked, but this guy's a really cool guy, but he told us that, and every time I interview somebody, they may be telling me about ghosts or, alien abduction or whatever it is. Dogman shows up quite a bit. Now, there's a guy named Keith Barr that I said his last name, don't matter. I don't care. But anyway, Barr, I don't think he minds, but Barr told us a story about his alien abduction. And we haven't talked about that on the show. But when he was closing, one of his abductions happened while he was closing the gate. It was the gate to his ranch, wasn't it? The pasture adjacent to his ranch. He had a piece of land that he was leasing or whatever, and he was closing the gate. And he sees this creature. He hears shuffling of feet, turns around. It's right across the street from him in the ditch. He goes, I'm tall. I'm 6'4". He goes, this thing was a little bit taller than me, and it was down in the ditch. It was about 1.5 feet down. So you're looking at a 7.5, 8 foot tall creature. And he said it was massive, and it was grayish black. And he got in his car and took off, or his truck and took off. He said that thing just stared at me the whole time. He said it had yellow eyes. And we recently recorded with Truth and Bass, and we did like 3 hours of just talking about the UFO and alien abduction phenomena. Yeah. We go in real deep, especially since their implants have moved. So that Truth reached out to me, and that sparked us to talk, and we ended up doing a conversation. So that's going to come out next Friday, the first episode with those guys, and it's all about the alien abduction phenomena. But I talk a little bit about Keith Barr's experiences and what he saw. But then right after that, he wakes up on the side of the road, and you'll probably hear me say that on the show, but he wakes up on the side of the road, and then he comes in the morning, and his wife is pissed. His wife, they're newlyweds, right? And she's angry with him, thinking that he's been out carousing all night. But he wasn't. He was abducted. His boots were off. They were sitting in the floorboard of his truck. He wakes up on the side of the road, and he's like, Wolf, think about it. After I saw that, he called it a demon. He said, after I see that damn demon with fur, look like a freaking werewolf. He goes, why would I pull over on the side of the road 2 miles down and just go to sleep?
Yeah.
He's like, it would have been hell trying to get to see, because I thought I'm going to have nightmares tonight. Then he wakes up and he's on the side of the road. His shirt's not buttoned up all the way, and he's just like, what in the hell has happened to me? It was another one of his abductions. But this thing showed up. It's weird. Mm-hmm. I've told people this before, too, and I stand by this. There are people who have had horrible things happen to them after running into one of these things. This isn't like something that I'm the only one that's talked about this. I'm not on the cutting edge of this. It's just an observation I made. And then I started going back and talking to other Dogman researchers, and several of them have told me, YouTubers, podcasters, authors, and they've said it. It's almost like Mothman. It's like there is some sort of like darkness around this thing. And when you see it, something is going to happen, or something is happening. The people from Nebraska, we talked about that family, and they would see these things, but they had these UFOs all the time in the skies, constantly around their property. They lived about 40 miles outside of Omaha. When you take these into account, I know that's not Texas, and Keith Barr's isn't from Texas either, but you get my point. It is something there. I believe this. We interviewed some people out of LaGrange who had seen werewolf-like creatures. I just call them Dogman, I guess. I don't know. Right outside of LaGrange, near the power plant. Remember, we had a couple of reports of people driving into work at the power plant there in LaGrange. Now, I've had other researchers tell me, these things show up near the power plants, right? Why is that? So does Mothman. It shows up, same thing. Why do aliens appear in the same area as these creatures? I don't think that they're all like maybe a part of the same phenomena in the way that people think they are. I think they show up at these with like nexus points where there's an energy grid there. There's energy.
Yeah.
So these UFOs are feeding off that energy, just like the Dogman, the Bigfoot, the Mothman, and spirits, demons, angels, whatever. These things show up, and it's like, you ever seen like, and I put an analogy to it. You ever watch a show like on the Discovery Channel, like where there's all these different animals at a watering hole?
Yeah.
They're not there because they're all friends.
No.
Okay. You'll see a lion down there kind of nervously drinking, and he knows there's crocs in that water, and he's got a drink. What's he going to do? And you look over, and there's like a zebra and a giraffe, and they're drinking too. They're not friends.
And they're just going to have like a truce.
Yeah. If that zebra were to kick that giraffe, or that giraffe were to butt that zebra, or if it were to kick the lion or whatever, I mean, they know that there's consequences. There's going to be, so they just kind of give each other a wide berth, and you see in the cartoons, they're all hanging out together like they're friends. Okay. This isn't Madagascar. They're not friends, and they would prefer to not have to be around each other. But if it's a drought, you're going to have to drink out of whatever mud hole is there and hope that the reptiles in there don't attack you. I've seen videos of, crocs grabbing lions, grabbing giraffe, grabbing zebra, grabbing everything, except for hippos. Maybe the baby ones, but they don't mess with those big hippos. They just don't do it. I've seen hippos literally. I saw a video of one this isn't AI either. This is an old video. It was a National Geographic video, and it had a croc up in the air, and it was coming apart. Like it was in half. Like it was biting like a 12-foot croc in half. I was like, holy shit. There's two animals that the Africans fear above all else, and that's the bachelor bull buffalo and the hippo. Now, that don't mean that they're not afraid of hyenas, lions, and crocs.
Yeah.
But those predators, they give them less, they give off less fear than those animals, because you don't want to cross the water. If there's nothing you can see in that water, you'll always see that croc kind of coming up, and they'll go back down. The hippo, all you see are the nostrils, and I know for a fact that they won't cross that water. They'll cross it if there's crocs in there on a boat or whatever. They won't cross it on a boat if there's a hippo. Trust me on that one. Look it up. It's one of the most dangerous animals on earth, and they kill more people than any of these other animals.
They're mean.
And bachelor buffalo are it's full of testosterone. Horns, hooves, and testosterone. That's all it is. And it is a nightmare creature. There are stories of these things getting shot by game hunters, and then 2 days later coming out and killing the person that shot them. They're vindictive and they're mean. And you'll see these lions like going to war with them and eating them or attacking them. And you're just like, God, there's got to be a better way to make a living, because those things are just brutal, dude. And they'll toss those lions 20 feet in the air. I mean, it's crazy, dude. So anyways, point being, these animals I think they're very much like these cryptids and these ghosts and these aliens. I think they inhabit the same areas for whatever reason, but I don't think that they're necessarily, maybe sometimes, but it's not always. I don't think they're necessarily working together. That's a misconception.
Just out of necessity.
You might see a scorpion and a snake in the same area. I was in an old ranch house in West Texas, and dude, there were scorpions everywhere, and there was a rattlesnake in one of the back rooms, and there were scorpions all over that room. They're not working together to make your day suck. They're just there. Tarantulas, scorpions, and snakes, they're just inhabiting the same area. They're not friends. That's something that people need to understand. There's a misconception that they're just because they're in the same vicinity that they're buddies or something. No. They're going to make your life suck, but they're not doing it necessarily together. So you have this weird, I guess you could say, like, when it comes to the Dogman phenomena, Is it a werewolf? Is it something that's always like that? In this case here, I'm going to say no. So what happened to Sambo when he was going to visit his girlfriend on another occasion about a week later, this giant wolf-like creature, once again, it happened to him when he was a kid, when he was like 10. This thing jumps out in front of him and then begins to chase him. And he runs down the hill. And there's literally people down there in the hole, like hitting balls and stuff. And it's dusk. It's not even pitch dark. And this thing chased him all the way to the fence. He jumped the fence and he's running across the yard, the field like a madman, screaming, interrupting all these black people that are there. And they're like, what is this white boy doing? Running with his shirt off at this point because his shirt was ripped.
Crazy white man.
He ripped his shirt jumping the fence. The thing didn't catch up to him. And then he looks up and he points, and there's this wolf going back over the hill. A couple of people in the outfield, they saw it. And they were like, whoa, what the hell is that? They were softball practice, right? So they all like run to the dugout, and there's just a bunch of black people there. And they're just like, that's the haint, and they started talking about it, and so that was his very brief encounter with that creature. And after that, he went and bought a car. And Jay told me, he goes, my dad paid through the nose for it, but he was determined to not have to go visit his girlfriend and walking by that guy's house. I remember that guy. And then when I was like a young teenager, like he just disappeared. And I don't know where he went, what happened to him. I don't know. Somebody had told me that he had moved to another town. And of all the places, and I don't know if it was a joke or what, but it was one of Loki and Chief's friends. And they said that there was an old guy that lived in Hearn. He was the only, once again, Hearn is an almost all black town.
Yeah.
There's only a few people that aren't black there. And they're the Pakistani people that own the gas stations. And then there's a little contingent of Italian people, which I still to this day don't know where they came from. But they are. There's a little couple of Italian families that live out on the edge. Then they own a ranch. So there is a story from Hearn called the Black Bunny Man, and I've heard it in 3 places now: Lake Jackson. I heard it in, Sour Lake, Beaumont, and in Hearn. Heavily dominated by black people. Those places. Why do they have this legend, this story? I don't know, but we're going to get into it on one of the Patreon episodes coming up. It is a weird thing, right? But yeah, this old man supposedly moved to Hearn, and everybody was telling me about, not everybody, but bless you. Everybody was telling me that he had moved away, a bunch of people. Because I inquired about him. I said, and I've asked multiple people, like, whatever happened to that guy? They said, well, he moved away, but nobody knows. The description of him fits perfectly, right down to his little dog. Now, here's the weird thing. If that dog was around in the 60s and 70s, how the hell was it around when I was alive, when I was a boy? Like I said, by the time I was 14, 15, he was gone. Possibly a relative still around. Or maybe it's him. Weird, I know. But if you listen to the story that was told to me, there is an old guy matching that description that lived in Hearn around all these black people. And they were just like, this guy showed up one day in the 90s and he just was living there, which makes sense, the timeline. And he's an old guy. He's got a little chihuahua, sits on the porch, does the same thing.
He just moves around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, one of my friends who lived in Hearn for years and years and years, and I'm not going to say his name. I'll call him G. But G, he's real superstitious. He's real superstitious. And his mother, because his dad was in the military, his dad married a Puerto Rican woman. His mother instilled all this fear in him of the, like he's scared to even talk about it, And if you look at this guy, you just think he's African-American, but he's got like this real curly hair that you can, and it's long, He's got nice hair. Like, I wish I had his hair, and he could do anything with it, but he's half Puerto Rican, half black. And he told me that when I asked him about that, because his grandmother still lives there, I said, your grandma still? He said, yeah, I still go there every now and then. He don't live there anymore. He lives up in Crockett. But I told him, I said, and the reason we were talking is because he had an encounter in Crockett. He had an encounter. And he's telling me about it. And he says, Wolf, I still go down there. I'll talk to my granny when I go down there. He's about 10 years younger than me. He goes back home and his grandmother says, yeah, I know that guy, but he moved away in 2020. Like, so in 2020, he moved, he left. Same description, same everything. And it was one of Chief and Loki's friends that had told me years ago, because I was in Manor and we were talking about this weird guy, right? Well, Manor had their own legend, like the Goat Man, the Will Barger Bridge. And it was one of their friends that was telling me this weird story. And he was telling me, that, and he's got a business and everything, so I don't want to put him on the spot, but he goes, "Oh, I know that guy." He goes, "One of my friends, was dating this Italian girl that lived on the edge of town out in Hearn, and she was talking about a guy that people claimed was a werewolf. And he was this old white guy that lived in the middle of the black neighborhood." When they started giving me the description of it, I was like, that has to be the same guy. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I can't pinpoint, and I haven't gone out there and looked, and I'm damn sure not going to go to Hearn and just start walking around the black neighborhood. Hey,
where's the old white guy around here?
Local honky here. I'm looking for one of my own. Can you tell me about this guy? And they're going to be like, who the hell are you? I'm like, what are you doing here?
Looking for one of our strays.
One of our people got away. You might know him. He's a werewolf, likes to whittle, got a weird dog. I don't know. Next thing you know, they're like,
one of these things is not like the other. I'm looking for that thing.
Let's play dominoes, see if the bunny man comes out.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of them weird things where I'm not going to take my chances and go in there. I've already been in the 5th Ward, not by choice, kind of by accident in Houston. And I talked my way out of it. But believe me, it wasn't easy. All right. It's just like, hey, sorry. Where am I at? In the 5th Ward, mother, I'm like, oh, okay, shit. Never been here before. Heard about it in rap songs. It is, yep, it does match the descriptions of what I've heard. Well, that is a 9mm in your waistband there, sir. I am in the wrong neighborhood. Yeah. And then they were just, finally, one of them just got in there and said, hey, man, where you from? You lost, whatever. And I told him, hey, man, I run a nightclub and whatever. And got turned around, able to talk my way out of it. Had to give a lot of free drinks away that next weekend. But yeah, I kept my word. I honored my word. I said, if you guys come to the club, don't do anything stupid. I'll give you some drinks, whatever. And they did. They didn't do nothing. They just hung out. Had to take the guns from them. You can't take the guns in the club, and then you're fine. I'm like, you're all right, man. I'm glad we didn't blow your head off. I am too. I like it where it's at. It is big, bulky, but I consider it carry on. Yeah. So no, that really did happen. I apologize to this day to Squid, Willie, and Diablo. And they asked Willie, what are you doing hanging out with these white boys? And Willie doesn't help me. He's like, I'm his driver. They're like, what? What are you? Miss Daisy? I said, no, it's not like that. It's not like that. We're just hanging out. We're just cool dudes, man. We're just in the wrong place. Yeah. I told Will, I was like, don't tell him you're my driver. That sounds like some kind of weird, segregation thing or something. Well, he's a good guy. I'll let him drive my car if I'm in it. That sounds horrible. Like a plantation owner or some shit. But it is what it is. I tell you this in all sincerity, and I'm going to tell you the absolute truth. There's a racist bone in my body.
Yeah.
I'm just talking frank here. There is a divide in a lot of these towns, especially if you grew up in the Old South. I grew up in the Old South, man. You know what our main deal was? Cotton. You know what our second export was from cattle?
Yeah.
So you're dealing with cows and cotton, right? Sorry, it's just the way it was. I mean, my family on both sides were cow punchers and cotton pickers, cotton growers, whatever. Not my fault. I just grew up. I just showed up. But I can tell you this, I don't have a firm belief one way or the other about that guy because I don't know. But if you were to say leaning one way or the other, like if you had to choose, would I say he was a werewolf? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do I have any kind of proof of that other than people's word? No, I don't. But there you go. So let's switch gears here to another part of Texas. If I can find it.
Do you want to pull up the map?
Yeah, I got the map already. I'm only doing this one county here, so it should be fine. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's the one with Hallettsville and Shiner. Folks, we're going to be doing a story about a guy who saw a minotaur, a guy named Billy. They call him BB. And Billy's got quite a story, and that's going to be, we're going to drop that one on Patreon and members only too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that one's coming up. But that is another crazy story. It happened in Lavaca County in Texas. Yeah, the map came up with that particular encounter. Let's see if I can find the map here. There it is. Oh man, so this is quite the county up here. So Polola County, folks, I looked this up on my my information, my files, and I found 6 different sightings. If you look up Polola County, and if you want to follow along with the map, you got some really interesting stuff there. You got an area called Toledo Bend Reservoir where there have been multiple sightings of Bigfoot and Dogman in that area. It's just south of Galloway. But in that area near Deadwood, if you go to the west of Deadwood where the Sabine River is, which would be east of Carthage, I went through that area, man. And there was one area where me and my brother went. We went and met some friends, and we gambled all weekend in Bossier City about 25 years ago. That area, dude, was so thick by that river where we pulled in. You couldn't, like, you got out and tried to walk down, you would just get caught up in the trees. Like anything could live in there, anything. And apparently it does. Some of the locals had told us when we were in Carthage that there were lots of black cat sightings. But these weren't normal black cats. What they were talking about was something like more the size of a freaking tiger. Because they were talking about these things being 300-400 pounds. I'm like, well, that's bigger than a jaguar. That's huge. I mean, that's a big cat. And one of them had a store there, had pictures of these paw prints that were big, and they were taken in by somebody in Galloway, and the paw prints were massive, dude. They had a comparison to the puma paw and to the paw print that was the male cougar. The paw print would not match up to that. Now, the jaguar print was a little closer, but not much. It wasn't like this thing was massive, dude. Now I never did, I couldn't, it wasn't my photos. I couldn't, this was in 2000. So it was like the guy had the Polaroids and it was taken in Galloway, right down there in the reservoir. And they were talking about how this massive, massive black cat was running around. I don't know, not on 2 legs or anything like that. It wasn't anthropomorphic, but shouldn't have been there. And if it was a jaguar, which the jaguar would be the one that has the melanin to be, it has that coloring. It's not going to have paws that big, right? So it doesn't make any sense. And the description of it, I'm going to tell you this, it sounded like a black tiger, but that doesn't exist, at least not in anywhere we know. But anyway, that's an interesting thing. There's another story we got out of Grand Bluff. And if you look at a map too, that's on the Sabine River up north. That's north of Carthage right there. But this particular encounter that we're going to talk about was a guy named Rich. Okay. And Rich had like Richard's story. It was on the Sabine River and he was camping out over there at private property at a friend's ranch. They have a piece of land right there and they had some cows or whatever, but it was just a square the way he described it. And then it was just like there were the cattle pen, the pasture, and then there was a horse pen right there. And there's about 200 acres and it's just right there. And it's just, you can see that it's surrounded by woods and they had so much predation going on that they just shut it down. So the people still lived there, but they no longer tried to raise livestock. And the Sabine River was right there, and something was taking their cows. One of their neighbors had told these people, and this was Richard's friends, right? Told them, hey, what's taking your cows isn't a human. What's taking your cows is a Bigfoot. Something that looks like a giant ape mixed with a man. And the description of this creature was quite interesting because the face looked human, really human, but the body, the conical head, everything pointed to this thing being some sort of like throwback hominin, you know? So I can't tell you what that was. All I know is that was the neighbors of this guy's friends. What Richard said, he worked with these people for years, and then he had to go out and help them hunt down and kill something because they still had horses, and one of their horses was killed in a horrific way. It was torn up, chewed up, and the head was torn and turned in in a direction it shouldn't go.
Huh.
And he said this wasn't a big, large horse. It was a yearling, but it was still, it would have taken a massive animal to do what it did, the way it did it, and it ate part of it. A singular animal, and they know that this animal was a wolf. So I asked Richard, I said, well, how do they know? Because he kept talking. I said, hold on, how do you know it was a wolf? He said, oh, it was 2003, right? He said, this was in 2003. He goes, so I don't have a phone with pictures of the paw prints. He's like, but in the mud of the paw prints, there were paw prints, and we tracked it down to the river. He said this thing was massive animal, but it had the claws out. See, he understood that. Retracted cat, claws out, canine. I said, okay, so you know that. I said, you didn't see any and I'm thinking possibly Bigfoot. I said, well, if your friend's neighbors said it was Bigfoot and they had seen a Bigfoot taking one of their sheep, what do you think that it could have been? He said, well, it wasn't a Bigfoot because there were no human-like footprints. Nothing that resembled anything. He's like, but I can tell you this, it was bipedal. And I said, okay, now you're talking. I was like, so this is a bipedal, 2 legs, wolf-like creature. He says, yeah, and the paw prints were massive. Anything that you could even compare. He goes, I saw a paw prints, of an animal up in Montana. And he said that the paws on that thing didn't come close to this one. He's like, we looked them up, and he said, and these things were like half a foot, around in the middle. So you're talking about an animal that's just absolutely gigantic. Just the middle pad was 6 inches. That's an enormous creature.
Yeah.
So he said, he goes, I can't even tell you because a lot of the when the mud, when an animal goes down, and it kind of makes it a little bigger, And I said that, and I said, this thing could be a little smaller than you think because it's just the mud is pushing it down. He goes, no. He said, no. This is the middle pad. You couldn't. He goes, the claws. You could see the claws, but the outside digits were a little distorted because of the mud. You could see but it drug one of these animals up into a tree, a deer. He said, and we found it, and the deer was completely eaten the way a wolf would eat a deer. Now, not to be graphic, but a deer does eat, a wolf does eat an animal from its butt.
Yeah.
And it tears out it opens up and eats the organs, the nutrient-rich organs. That's what this thing had done. And then it had come back, climbed up that tree, and he said there were claw marks all over that tree. Now, I asked this question. I said, now, there have been black bear sightings in that area going way back. I read about one from like 1976, something like that. And he said, dude, there haven't been black bears in this area in forever. I don't know anybody who's seen any. And if there were, I mean, it's not going to be big enough to do that. And the claws don't match. He goes, it was definitely canid. This thing, nobody saw anything like shape shifting or anything like that. But he said, we were driving in between my friend's ranch and my other friend's property. He said, and we were on this county road. He goes, and we come out to this 4-way stop. He goes, and right there in the ditch, I see something moving back and forth. He said, it looks so weird, dude. There was like this black mass just kind of moving around. He's like, and I'm like, what is that? He goes, and it's the light from my friend's old Ford. It wasn't illuminating. He goes, it
stayed black.
It just stayed black. Yeah. He goes, so I jump out with a flashlight, and the blackness of this thing, it started to like come into focus. Now, that's his words, not mine. And I'm like, what do you mean? He says, well, that light-sucking blackness that it was before was not that way anymore. And he said, this thing like turned and looked at him. And when it looked up at him, he goes, it just kind of turned and had a big old piece of meat in its mouth. He goes, and I realized it was eating a deer. He's like, and that black, whatever it was moving around was like a ridge on this thing's back. He said, and it stood up on its, all fours and kind of bluff charged me. Thank God. He goes, and I got back in the truck and we went in reverse and this thing went onto the road. He said, and the way it ran toward the truck was on all fours, but it was sprawled out and it was like it was spider crawling. He goes, and the head was absolutely massive and it was a wolf-like head. He goes, and when we turned the truck around, he goes, my friend did an amazing, just driving like a stunt man. He goes, and we burned out of there. I could see this thing began to run on two legs, not on all fours anymore, chasing behind our truck. He goes, and it was gaining ground. He goes, and my buddy, once we hit the unpaved road and we hit the gravel, we weren't going as fast. He said we were sliding because we were going like 70. He goes, and all I could see in the rearview mirror is this thing is getting bigger. It's getting closer. And he goes, I just kept thinking objects in mirror are closer than they appear, So Richard was telling me this. He says, and this thing was gaining ground. He goes, and finally, he goes, we turned. He goes, and there was an open field right there. And we just took off in that open field, headed for some trees because we didn't know where else we were going to go. We were like, we're going to have to turn around at some point. We look back and the thing isn't there. He's like, we both had rifles. So we got them out. We stopped, looked around. We didn't see this thing. We had our weapons ready in case we needed to do something. And then he goes, and then we headed back out to the pasture on this gravel road. We're on somebody's land. He's like, and then we go over a cattle grade. And as soon as we go back around, he goes, I just hear this slapping thud. He's like, and I don't know where this thing came from. It just came out of nowhere. He goes, I just see this clawed hand, which looks like it's gray fingers. He said the fingers look gray. And it grabbed a hold of his seatbelt, like his seatbelt, was like, he goes, I'd put the seatbelt in because my friend's driving crazy, He's like, I'm admit it. I used to never wear a seatbelt. He's like, I thought I'm going to go through this damn windshield, I'm going to be, So he goes, I just put my seatbelt on. This thing reaches in and grabs the seatbelt and is pulling it. He goes, and it's like cutting my neck. He goes, it gave me a bad a burn on my neck. He goes, and I look over and this thing is just he's like, you could look in the face. It was just pure like animalistic anger, like hate. And this thing was reaching in and it was holding on to his seatbelt and it was holding onto the back of the truck bed, by the other hand. He goes, and it was swinging its leg in. He goes, and this nasty, weird paw was bloody and wet was trying to swing into the truck and bring its big ass body inside. I said, how tall do you estimate this thing was? He goes, I don't know, 7 feet maybe. He goes, but it was too massive. It couldn't get in. And then the head, he's like, I'll never forget this as long as I live. The head was like inches from my face and was just barking. Like it was barking like a dog. He's like, and so I took my rifle like as best I could. And I started like butting it in the face and then it just let go and it goes, and it didn't fall and tumble like a normal animal would just go falling and tumbling into a ditch. Richard was like, no, it just like fell and was just standing straight like nothing had happened. Like defying the laws of physics, and he's like driving and his friend was just looking over and he's just like, what the hell was that shit? And he goes, I don't know. And what the hell did we just see? Freaking the hell out. So they go back to this guy's uncle's place where this friend of his lived. They tell the uncle about it. His aunt was deceased. She wasn't around. And the uncle tells him, he says, oh, you ran into something. This uncle says that the Sabine thing is not a Bigfoot at all. It's one of those creatures. And there's not just one of them. There's like a pack of them. And he said that you can't do anything around here because these creatures will attack your livestock, your cattle. He goes, and there are other creatures out there, like the Bigfoot type creature that some people think is the Sabine thing. According to this guy, that's not what it is. He said that those things were driven out and they moved further down. Now, if you looked at the map, according to that guy, they're down there at the bottom of the Sabine River, now down near the bend, the Toledo Bend Reservoir. He says you'll see more of those creatures down there. There's like a tribe, but he called it like a tribe. He said there's like a tribe of them, and that these creatures, these wolf-headed creatures, they moved in and drove them other ones out. And when the people get these sounds or whatever, like what I heard when I was a kid out there, that is what that is. That it's one of these things. Now, when I asked Richard, I pressed him to give me more of a description. He's just like, man, it looked like if you were to take an ape and a man and a wolf, and just mix them all together. Where the ape head would be, there would be a wolf head, and where the ape legs would be, there'd be a wolf's body, lower body. He goes, but the midsection and the arms and everything, they were long. He said it was kind of ape-like, and the way it moved and how it moved so fast, but it was like running faster on two legs when it got up off of the ground. He goes, and I guess we disturbed it and it was pissed off. But that's not the end of it. So he tells me, he goes, there's another guy named Tyler who can give you a better story about this or whatever, because that's what happened to me. He's like, I never saw it again. Years later, he goes, I ran into somebody, a friend of mine, we were shooting pool, and they were up in Grand Bluff, and that's another part of the county up there. And he says, we were shooting pool up there in Grand Bluff. He goes, and same county, Polola County. And this guy walks in. He's an old friend of theirs. They played football against each other. And he tells him, hey, I got a friend that's seen one of these things. That guy said he had not only seen one and dealt with one, he killed one. He shot it. Now, this guy's name is Tyler. Now, Tyler and his buddy, there's another guy that's his friend. They called him Huffy. I don't know why they call it his nickname, but him and Huffy were like out hunting. And it was they were hunting deer, and they were up near the top of the Sabine River, area called River Hill. And that would have been like, I forgot the name of the place, like right there. It's right next, it would have been west of Midyet. If you look on a map, it's west of Midyet. And he said that they were there at River Hill, and they were up in a tree stand up in that area, just right outside the town of Midyet. There's a friend of theirs private property. And he said that they were both up there, not really hunting. I heard a guy tell me that earlier today. He's like, I was hunting, but I'm not really a hunter. I was just kind of there having fun. That's what these guys were doing. He's like, we were young. We were like 17 and 19. And Huffy was just, being loud, dipping snuff, spitting everywhere. They were just there having fun so they could drink underage, right? And so this thing walks out into the clearing. They had deer corn laid out, right? It walks out to the clearing, knocks over the deer, the feed. They had like a feeder that was off by one of the trees, knocks it over and just looks at them, and then gets down on all fours with its hands, like kind of like a knuckles. And that's where they get the description of these things up there that look like an ape, because the upper body looks like an ape, and these things will stand on their knuckles. Yeah. They have these big old claws, right?
Extra long arms.
Yeah, these really long arms. And so this thing, but the head was like a wolf. And their initial reaction, it wasn't humongous. It wasn't like some giant creature. It was only about 6 feet tall. But the way that they described it was super aggressive. And at first they thought, this is a really big man in a Halloween mask. But then they saw the ears twitch. Now, do you remember when Chris Burke, who works with us, he's a former priest, ex-Marine. He came on the show and talked about the one wearing the clown mask and how he knew it wasn't a mask because it was he saw the ears twitch and he knew that wasn't the
same thing.
Yeah, it wasn't a wolf mask under a mask. It was a man or a creature. Well, you hear that sometimes, and this thing had really long ears, like tall ears. When I talked to this guy about it, I asked him, I said, could it have been like an Anubis thing? Richard's like, look, man, I'm just telling you what they told me. I can't tell you that. They just said it was long ears. And I asked him, I said, the one that you saw, how long were the ears? He goes, pretty long. They were pretty big. He goes, it just looked like a nasty, deformed wolf. And when I asked him about that, I said, pressing him, I said, Richard, what do you mean like a deformed wolf? Like, what does that mean? He says, well, the head of this thing, like the lips didn't go down over the teeth. Like it doesn't, like, like an animal can close its mouth. Mm-hmm. He's like, this thing is like its teeth are bared the whole time. Like the lips are too short to cover, or the fangs are just too massive. And he said, and the mouth was just full of fangs. How, there's incisors on the kid. Yeah. They didn't have that. It just had a bunch of jaggedy teeth. The thing did not look normal at all. He said it just looked like something out of a lab that they made just to kill.
Yeah.
And even the one I saw, I remember just a mouthful of fangs, but it didn't look all crooked. The way he was talking, the teeth were all over the place. This guy had the same description. This thing just opened its mouth and was like it was yawning, but this weird sound came out of it that actually hurt them in their chest, stomach, and head. And they were like, what the hell? Kind of like an infrasound.
Mm-hmm.
And then his friend who'd introduced him to him, he said, tell him about the laughing. This thing made a noise like it was laughing at them. Now, interesting, there's 2 places in Texas that we get these hyena type creatures. But there's another one that looks, and there's different types, I'm telling you. There's another one that looks kind of like this, but I've heard of it it happened in Lufkin, Texas. That's another one. There was a guy from Lufkin. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I remember his last name started with a G. I can't remember. I don't want to say I remember his last name. I won't say it. Okay. His last name was Green, but anyway, I won't say his first name, but if I don't remember anyway, but he was talking about these things making a laughing noise. And there was 2 of them. And there again, he was up in a tree stand. This thing ran up to their tree and started to climb it. As that happened, it was making that noise, like that kind of a bellowing noise. Like I don't know how to, I can't do it. He said it was kind of like a stuttering. Now he didn't do it, but I know what the guy from Lufkin said. The way that he did it, it was like a like that. Like it was like going out in spurts. That's what this guy was saying that this guy told him. Richard said that this guy told him that it was kind of doing and it was like coming from its throat. Its mouth was open to make that noise, which is debilitating. But his friend, Huffy, was the way he described him was kind of like he's half retarded or something. But I don't know the guy. But he said, he just said, you son of a bitch. And he reached over the side and with a 30, okay, bam, bam. That's a big gun. That's a strong gun, right? He had a 6.5, so that's not, that's pretty good. Deer rifle, it can kill. But at point blank range, it don't matter. Either one of those, hitting the head, you're going to go down. This thing fell on its back onto the ground out of the tree, and they sat there for about 2 hours. The thing didn't move, and nothing happened. There was blood. They didn't move. They didn't get out of the tree stand. But then night comes. The uncle comes up. They had heard gunshots in the distance, so some other people had bagged something, right? He says, I heard gunshots. I figured you guys, whatever. No cell phone, no reception out there at all. They had cell phone, but no reception. He says, we've had somebody, hit a deer on the other side, a stag. He pulls up. He doesn't see a stag. He sees this weird looking monstrosity there, right? He goes, what the freaking heck is that? Not using those words, but and so these kids, they get down off the tree stand. They're like, is it dead? The uncle goes up, pokes it with a gun, rolls it over. It doesn't change into a man. It's just that creature. That's what it is. It makes this laughing noise like a hyena. You know how they make those noises? Mm-hmm. And the boys started telling him that it was laughing like a hyena. It was making this bellowing noise out of its throat. It was hurting our chest. All these different things, right? But that's a type of one of these creatures, because there's another one that actually looks kind of like a hyena. It really does. And they're found in 2 places, far east Texas and far west Texas, north of Big Bend, where you hear these encounters going from there. If you go down 20, Highway 20, going to Paiute and all that, you go through there from Monaghan, that whole area right there. I was talking to a guy about it today. And that area, from there to Midland, Odessa, you get those weird hyena type creatures. You had that truck full of roughnecks out of Odessa that had that thing chase them on all fours. It didn't do anything else, but it was a hyena. I mean, it looked like a hyena, but it was making this weird noise, like, laughing and making a bellowing noise. This thing looks weird. It looks like an apish Dogman type creature.
Freakazoid mutant.
Yeah, but it makes that weird noise. Now, you remember we also covered some in it would be East Central Texas. We did a whole show on it about these Dogman creatures that were like, some of them had human-like faces.
Yeah.
Like Gollum or so. It's just so weird. And that one with the big nose, I don't know if we told that one. It was that guy, Zachary, let's call him Zach B. He gave us the story of one of it had like a big nose, like a big, like a gibbon, like a monkey. Yeah. And I was like, what in the freaking hell? But it was in the ground. Like it came up like a prairie dog almost, it was weird. And then those kids out of Mason, they had that thing looked like a giant, like a Dinopithecus, like a baboonish creature. but it was definitely canine in the head. They were like, no, I'd look like a canine. So you get all these weird different types, and we should write about that, like maybe just do a book on the different types here in Texas, because in different regions you have different types. And I do believe these things, like I've said before, they come from the inner earth. I mean, that's my opinion. That's the best I can guess. I don't know. But this creature that did this, that fell out of that tree, so they take it. They try to lift it up, right? And it's the uncle and two boys. It's so heavy, they can't lift it up and put it in the back of the truck. And these guys are like, our uncle was like, he was strong. Like, they were telling Rich, they're like, he should have been able to lift it. He's such a strong guy. Couldn't do it. Could not get it in the back of the truck. So they were like, you know what? Let me go get some help. He tried to get one of the boys to stay there, and they're like, hell no, 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 no. And so they ended up getting in the truck, and they drove, whatever, like a mile up the road. And when they come back, he said it couldn't have been more than 10 minutes. We come back and the thing is gone. Absolutely positive that they killed it. I told Richard this, and Richard, like, I don't know these people that he's talking about, right? Tyler and Hovey, that's their names. I don't know anything about them, who they are, or anything. But Richard told me, he says, this is what I told them. He goes, and I believe this. He goes, I think that there was another one close by. And I said, that's what I was going to say. That's exactly what I was going to say. I told Richard that. I said, dude, there had to have been another one there, and they went and they grabbed it. There was a guy that one of my interviews, a guy that my partner interviewed years ago. I can't remember his name, but he was on Brenton Solwin's show. An old friend of mine, Brenton Solwin, and he talked about hitting one of these creatures on this. It was, or not hitting it, but a big truck had hit one of these creatures, and it was on the side of the road near Waco when they were on their way to Dallas. It was in between Waco and Dallas, which, if you remember, I interviewed the pro wrestler, Lance Hoyt, a good friend of mine. And he talked about being with these other three wrestlers and seeing this werewolf literally run across the road. And it was like they almost hit it with their SUV. And the back was higher up than the freaking hood. And he was on our show. That's weird, because where this guy claimed to have hit this thing was out near Hillsboro. It wasn't far away from there. And he was talking about, it was on I-35. And when they came back from doing their job south of Fort Worth, that creature was gone. It didn't get up and walk away. It was dead. Like, he touched it. It was dead as a doornail. He said the fur was like a wolf, whatever. These guys touched this thing too. It was bleeding from the mouth, eyes. It was dead. Part of the head was gone where he had shot it. Shot it in the mouth, blew part of the mouth off, top of the head. It was gone. And in the shoulder. And so he shot it 3 times, boom, boom, boom. And then it fell and it was gone. When they tried to get it in the truck, it was so heavy, they couldn't get it in the truck. They tried to go get some help, and then they come back 10 minutes later, it's gone. Now, what on earth could be that heavy? Another thing, a weird thing about this too. Now, by this point, their cell phones are all dead. They didn't have any cell service, and then they had their phones there all day and night. Phones are all dead, and phones didn't have the battery life that we got nowadays. These phones can stay alive a lot longer. But you stop and you think about this. Something must have been there watching, maybe stalking the whole time, to be able to say, hey, as soon as these people leave, I'm going to come and retrieve this body. Because I do believe that if the story is to be believed, Richard told me that story he didn't change the details. It was just very matter of fact. That creature was dead. Physically dead, and something took it. That is something that I don't understand. We don't understand. You can contemplate it. You can try to, whatever. Doesn't matter. Like, dead is dead. Or is it? Who knows? What if it was a werewolf? What if it's like the Bulgarians and the Hungarians and the Romanians? When it dies, it becomes a vampire. Who knows? Maybe a vampire got up and walked around. I don't know. Thank you for that, Odysseus. Thank you for buying those memberships. And thank you to those who donated today. We appreciate it. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. But yeah, if you have any questions or anything to comment on, there's a whole lot of meat left on the bone. We got a lot to talk about, but unfortunately, I can't do it tonight. I only got about another maybe 15, 20 minutes because I got to go to work. Some people. Some people just want to fight. That's all it is. They just want war. It never ends. Oh well, God bless them. Right. So here's the thing. If you have any questions or if you got anything to add to this, you want to say something, whatever. Maybe there's some questions you have that I can answer that I didn't already talk about, whatever. Richard's story, though, and nothing personal or against Richard. Richard's told an amazing story, but he told me, he goes, I have a story you've never heard before. It's the most amazing. This is crazy what happened to me. And then when he told me, I was listening to him, and he was like, "You don't sound like you're really enthused." That's not the thing, Richard. I'm not like not enthused. I'm taking notes and I'm listening to what you're saying, but I've heard a bunch of crazy stuff. So you kind of become not acclimated. What do you call it? Desensitized?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you've heard so many, crazy tales of people.
It becomes your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I mean, and so he didn't understand that. And I just said, look, man, it's not that I'm not impressed. It's not that I'm not impressed that you escaped and that happened to you. It's just that when you cover so many of these and you go over so many of these, it's just, it's hard to be.
It's like the abnormal becomes normal.
Well, yeah, because yesterday I was talking to somebody who claimed that a witch type creature was trying to drag them through their window when they were a kid, and she was like, terrified. I mean, so you get all these stories, and those stories you may not even hear about them until months down the road. But I mean, you deal with it. I've been listening to people's encounters all weekend. So I went back over it with him briefly, and I was like, making sure we got all the notes correct and everything. But that's Polola County. Now, there's another one. There's a couple of them still.
Mm-hmm.
They're from Polola County. But yeah, those are. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, you got to watch the Monday show, folks. I know there's 615 people here right now. There was 40 something. There was maybe more than that. But I know we'll probably get about 300 or 400 people in the chat tomorrow, on Monday. But people come on and they retell their stories, and it's incredible what they talk about. And I'm a little more loose on the Monday show.
Yeah.
It's just a little more, and the show can go in any direction, and you can jump on and you can talk with us. And you don't have to have a story. Some people just want to pick my brain and ask questions, and you could come on and you could talk and talk about whatever you want, and just remember, we can get into some weird stuff, and so if you really want to get into it, the Monday show is really awesome. So Odysseus says, are there any Men in Black stories, Wolf? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Who were we talking to? Oh, it hasn't been released yet.
Yeah,
we were with Truth and Bass last night, and they were talking about Men in Black.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll get into it a little bit with them. Next Friday, we'll be releasing. So you'll get a free show on Friday. That'll be, and those interviews, we're going to do a bunch of interviews, mostly so we can get the pod people to get their, because they were just complaining. We haven't gotten a show since the end of July. I'm like, yeah, well, it didn't upload. Sorry. But, you could have gone to YouTube and gotten a show. But one of the people I interviewed today, he was saying that he listens to the podcast religiously whenever he's working at night. And he's a security guard. And he says, I listen to it at night when I'm doing security. Another guy said he works on the oil fields, and he was talking about it. And, so they listen to the podcast because they can't sit there and stare at the chat and do the YouTube thing. So I understand that. So we have to throw them episodes too. But the truth and bass thing, I thought, it's going to be a rehash of what we talked about once before on the show, on the live stream. Maybe we'll get into some other stuff. Shoot, it was 3 hours later.
Yeah.
And we were talking about everything. I mean, the Miami Mall incident, the Las Vegas incident, I mean, it's crazy. We even talked about a little bit of Dogman stuff too, just because of Barr's experience. You get into these stories and you just start going down that rabbit hole, man, and it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and it goes further than you could imagine. There are people that tell me all the time, like, I can't believe how deep this goes and how it's all connected. It's interconnected like a spider web. But yeah, we get real deep on Mondays too. We get real down in there. So be sure to show up tomorrow night, hang out, whatever. I like Mondays. And then Tuesday is the Patreon episode. The last Patreon episode we did, was it the Texas?
No, you know what? Yeah, I think it was.
What was the one on Thursday that we did?
That was a members only show. That was the Tiffany's vampires.
Oh yes,
pretty horrific.
Damn. And so yeah, we were at the dealership, and the guy at the dealership watches our show. We were talking about that with him. That's funny. We had to go in there to get a canceled warranty because I couldn't get a hold of anybody. So I had to drive over there, and we just started talking about it. And I was on Abe's show last Thursday, and we were talking. He had Sparky on, and we were talking about the ghosts, the ghost at the White Lady Cemetery, the ghost of I forgot the name of the cemetery, but it's the White Lady of whatever the cemetery is called out there in Bee Caves. And that cop, I'll never forget, he told me, he said, first time I saw it was 2005, I thought it was an actual person. I thought it was too. But I saw it. I'm convinced that was the White Lady, the lady in white, but people call her the White Lady.
Yeah.
And the reason they call her White Lady is because she was killed by Comancheros, not Comanches, but the people that trade with them.
Mm-hmm.
And at that gym right there, the Gold's Gym, I used to work out with Bane and Bones. Me, Squid, Diablo, Scorpion, we all used to go up there and work out. And that's where a bunch of powerlifters would go and work out overnight. And my home gym was at William Cannon, but sometimes those big powerlifters would go. We'd go over there and we'd lift. And it was fun, especially I was the strongest until Bane got too strong, But he could squat like a car. The guy could squat a car, So, but anyway, we were out there, and Bones was talking about seeing that or not him, it was Greg, the Greek dude who worked there. He was talking about seeing that woman running by the window, and she was dressed in white. And sometimes she would look like a skeleton, because they had found her bones. Like, that was an old farm right there, and they had found her bones near the barn, down by the creek. They found her bones. And so after that, where they buried her, in between there and that barn, they would see her moving around. Still to this day, people see it. And it was just unfortunate for me, or fortunate, depending on who you are, that I was guarding that CVS that they were opening, and I saw it. It was raining, and it was October, and I remember looking over and thinking, "Why is that woman walking around that cemetery?" Because it looked like a physical thing.
Yeah,
yeah. But in that same area, you get Dogman reports big time in that area. And one of the stories we talked about on the Patreon, you got to join the Patreon, was another Bear King story that we got. It just kind of went into it. We got into the Bear King thing, because people will see this, like Guadalupe Hernandez and Jenna Holenbeck, they were on the show, two different people, but, two different times, whatever. And they talked about this creature. They look like a werewolf. But it wasn't, because he started describing it, and it was a bear. It was a giant bear man looking thing. So I think that is more of like I don't believe that's a Dogman. I don't believe that at all. And then Brad, the spelunker guy, he saw it, and he was out there, hearing all these stories about Dogman. He runs into that thing. Totally different creature. But there again, why do these creatures' territory overlap? If they were predators, they would kind of have each other, like, have their own little boundaries. I don't think that's what it is. I think that they go to certain areas for a certain reason. Probably energy would be my guess. My opinion. Main house says energy eaters. There you go. Hey, Brandy, Blondes and Booze. Brandy, you want to jump on? Throw a link out there if somebody wants to jump on. We got a few minutes here.
Okay.
I wanted to hear about the conference and how it went. If you want to jump on and give us the details. Andres says, did anybody have any spider or scorpion dreams after the show? I don't know. Did they? Brandy says she's driving. Well, you can still jump on if you want and just, talk if you can. If not, don't hurt yourself. Mike Candelius says werebear. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is it? What is the Bear King? We know people see it. David Weatherly's covered some cases of people seeing it. I've had several researcher friends who've seen it. We've had people come on the show and say they've seen it. And most notably Brad from the whatever. He was a researcher that went out to the Hernandez Ranch looking in the cave systems. You get a lot of weird stuff, a lot of weird reports, and I don't know what that is. Crossing Realms conference was a blast. I take it Amy Creel went. I would have loved to have gone, but I didn't want something to happen. And then, it messes up the conference or whatever. Cryptical Crossroads. Where have I heard that before? Yeah, Takayasha says giant berserker man. Sounds like an old leftover Viking or Celtic being. I think the latter also had many wearing bear skins. Yeah, I mean, the runes that were found. They're a cave in a place called Cow Creek. That's something that's always interested me. People say it's near Bertram, but not really. It's actually near Cow Creek. That's where it was found. And I don't know, man. I mean, that area from there all the way to Marble Falls and up into Dripping Springs, kind of like a triangle. And people claim to have seen it. There was a guy named Foster. I don't know his first name. It's just a story. Who claimed to have seen one of these things. Literally a bear man-like creature. And we went right there in Lago Vista where these guys had claimed that they had seen Bigfoot and all this stuff. Well, one of those guys told a story. His name was Ford, but he told a story. We did an impromptu live, but it got deleted. Like our thing malfunctioned and it was a live. Remember, we were on location and it deleted it. I don't know what the hell happened. But that guy, it was a guy named Ford, another guy named Foster. Both names started with F, easy to remember. But they claim to have seen in that area a giant bear-like creature on two legs, walking like a man, dragging a half man, half ape-like creature with no head. Like the way it was built was like, with one hand, it had this carcass that it was dragging. And I know this story sounds crazy, but these three guys that were out there, one of them said this was a true story. I had heard these legends before, these stories that these guys were attacked by a bear type creature, was dragging this thing behind it with no head. The reason they think it was a man-like, ape-like, whatever, because they found the head stuck on a pike, on a stake. And we actually went out there to where this legend, this story has been told and retold. I remember it was a story when I was young, like it was like there was a fight between a bear and a Bigfoot. And now the story, and I don't think it's changed. I think it just people, when you dig deeper into it, I think it was that creature they called the Bear King. I think it killed a Bigfoot. And I think it put it on a stick, put its head there. This Bigfoot type creature had been terrorizing some of the people that were the natives that had been moved in over there. I say native, the natives to the founders of Lago Vista. Mm-hmm. They were being terrorized. Something was throwing rocks at their cabins and tearing up their livestock pens. And this Bear King thing, whatever, I don't think it was doing him any favors. I think it just ran across it and killed it. That's my opinion. And these two ranchers, Ford and Foster, that had their land adjacent to that, They were right next door to each other. You know, their ranches were the two big ones there back in the 1880s, and they witnessed it. They were on horseback, and their horses were rearing up, and they see this bear creature coming out of the thicket, just pulling this ape-like body. And then about 2 miles up the road, they see this big stake with looks like the head of what would be considered a Bigfoot. This was in like 1884.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that show, but remember the feed died or whatever, and then we couldn't upload it. But that was on location. We went there to where that's at. We'll go back out there. I just don't want to go at night. I'm not going to do that. Because like I said before, the Dogman, the Bigfoot, all that stuff don't really scare me anymore. It's not really something I'm not worried about. I don't want to run into these things because I think they do grab people, they do things to people. But the bear creature is like, have you ever seen a bear like in a cage trying to get loose? It's just the most horrific thing you'll ever remember in your life. Now imagine something with a human level intelligence that's malevolent. It could be the evil spirit, and that thing could just be a vessel at this point for whatever demon. I'm not going to deal with that. The thing that can kill a Bigfoot and just drag it like it's nothing, I don't want to deal with that. I just don't, you know. It's just not my thing, man. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Cryptical Crossroads is Casto. Okay. All right, Josh. Sorry about that. I got so many people to keep up with. And Amy Krill says BMR is fun. BMR is a good guy. I like Boomer a lot. That's why I sent him those hats. Boomer, if you're out there, I need you to wear that Texas one, the one with the spur and the Texas, state of Texas, man. Then we'll be really cool. I gave you the Lions hats. And you don't got to worry about freaking the Cowboys. They ain't worth a shit this year. The Bucks, I don't know. And the Texans, man, they're like 0-3. My teams suck. They suck. And the Astros, let's see what they're doing. No, they got swept. Most important series of the year, and the Bastards got swept. And I can't say that because they had so many injuries. It was ridiculous. For them to be in first place all year, though, and then at the end of the season do that and get swept, and now they're pretty much out of contention. They had a great team, too, but the injuries just killed them. They could still be a wild card, though. But that wild card is so dangerous. It's just that's like 9 years in a row for winning the division. They could have done it this year if they would have just done to the Mariners what the Mariners just did to them.
Yeah,
they would have won that division again. Amazing though. Yeah, Die Guy says Mariners. Yeah, amazing though that they did what they did with all the injuries they had. 17 of their key players were on the injured reserve for at least 20 to 30 days apiece.
That's crazy.
That's insane. It's like a record. Like, to have that many injuries to the starters. Now, Mike's talking about the Eagles, Chargers, and the Bills and the play. Well, it's a little early for all that. This is like the third game. I'll tell you who's not going to be there, though, is the Cowboys. I predict that they're going to win 6 games this year. They're terrible. They're terrible. With that defense, they can't stop nobody. They couldn't stop a middle school team. My high school team could probably beat them defensively. Yeah, we could probably that.
Hopefully, those draft picks do something.
Mm-hmm. Because that defense can't stop nobody. They couldn't stop our high school offense. They're crazy. Anyways, folks, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to everybody who donated. Thank you for everybody who helped us out. Curtis Turner says, "Oh, look, another supporter PRT for life. Much love to my good friends at PRT. Josh is a good man. The lies against him need to stop." You know, I don't know how they're going to. Love you guys as always. Keep going. You're the best show. Thank you. Appreciate it. And Brianna says, "It's been a while. I have so many personal and family stories. Missed you guys." Life 1042 says, "Demons are attached to them. When you see one of the demons attach themselves to the witness and torment them, nightmares, etc." Yeah. Alan House says, "Great show." Thank you to how do you say that? Cameron Stanfield, as always. Thank you for helping out, man. And thank you to everybody. Jason Broussard for donating that big donation and then giving the memberships. Jordan Cogburn and 1042 became a new member. Shade Viking, speaking of swag, here's some swag for PRT. And then Lawrence Morgan, who gifted a membership. Thank you to everybody. Odysseus, who gifted 5 memberships. Thank you to everybody who donated and helped out and helped keep the show going. It's awesome. Also, don't forget, tomorrow night we'll be back, Monday night, and then we're on Tuesday. It's the Patreon episode on Tuesday. Join the Patreon. You won't be disappointed. Not only do you get another episode every week, but you get a great bunch of swag. Now, we were talking about this, and we don't know if we can keep up the pace because we have that extra show every week. We may move either the members or the Patreon shows to 2 to 3 shows a month. Probably with the Patreon because you already get the swag, right? We're not doing that right now. We're going to keep going as much as we can. It's just having the time to edit everything. That's the problem.
Yeah, it takes a while.
It takes a while. But we don't have but 2 people to do it. So with Tony working all the time. So what we got going on, if that does happen, we're not going to do it in October because October is just balls to the wall. It's all about this stuff here. But maybe in November when we restructure it a little bit, we might cut back a couple shows, but you're still getting all the swag. I mean, it's still a great deal. And we'll see how many people will actually go and watch the Patreon because we had much people join.
Yeah.
But I know by the numbers of the views that not everybody's going and watching the Patreon. And there's some stupid people that were like, nobody's watching your show because it sucks and you suck and you're not a communist. Now, that's not what's happening. It's because people probably are busy. I mean, that's what I would assume. Because if you're paying for something, why would you not participate?
Yeah.
Yeah, you help out and you get the swag, but you also get an episode, So I think our Patreon is the best deal going. I see a lot of other people's Patreons and they don't do anything. They're just like, oh, well, thanks for the help. They're not giving you merchandise and they're not giving you extra shows. I'm not doing anything for you. So, all right, guys, thank you. We're going to bell. All right. Good night.